Have you ever run into the issue when in your Salesforce instance you get the error message that you've hit too many SOQL queries? Maybe this has come from a user who got an error message thrown up on their screen, or you're seeing it in your unit tests. But it's quite annoying, and the problem with this error is it's very hard to troubleshoot. Oftentimes with other errors, we'll get a stack trace that'll tell us exactly where the error is happening. We can jump in and fix it. But with too many SOQL queries, the problem is usually happening in one area of the code that's just generating too many errors, and then another piece of code that's working properly will actually be the straw that breaks the camel's back. That and when you go to look at where the error actually happened, it has nothing to do with bad behavior or bad code. So what we're going to look at today is how to troubleshoot this error, because that's one of the trickier things about it, is just finding out where is the code, and that's what we're going to focus on in today's video. So first we're going to look at an example. So here I have two accounts, Dickinson PLC and GenePoint, and I know here if I change the SLA from this guy from bronze to silver, I can save it and it's just fine. And then when I go over to this account and I try to do the same thing, I get the error. System limit, too many SOQL queries. And it's telling me it's happening in the account trigger. And like I said before, that's not always the case where the actual problem is. So how do we troubleshoot this? We'll start with our logs. So you'll either have to turn on logging. In this case, I had dev console open, so it automatically turns on logging for me. And I can see right here, I see the exact same error showing up in the last log that got generated. So I can open this log up. And this is a fairly simple system, so there's not a whole lot going on in your production environments. You'll probably have a lot more activity. So there's two different ways we can approach this. First, right here in this the developer console log, I know it's going to be one of the things that we're going to look for is the queries themselves. We can look at these limit usage and we can see the number of queries, SOQL queries here, 3 out of 100. And usually throughout your log, you're going to see that grow. That just tells us like how things are going in the system. But really what we know is we are making too many SOQL queries. So what we want to do is filter this list just on the queries themselves. And there's a couple different ways we can do that. We can click executable and we'll see, in addition to SOQL queries, lots of other things. I like to simply filter on the word select because I know that's gonna, we can see there's an example of a query right here. And it's case sensitive. So this will filter it to simply my select statements. And when I do that, I can see pretty clearly here, I've got two different queries that are happening over and over and over again. In a real environment, it won't be this simple. But this is, if it is, great. You know where to start looking. Now, if it's not, we're going to take a look at that example as well. If this were more complicated, for instance, if there were, let's say 8 or 9 different queries that were being repeated, or I couldn't tell if they were being repeated because there's so many other queries, I can't visualize it. What I'm going to do is export it into a text editor. So we'll do that by downloading the log. And we can just open it. And here I'm using Notepad++, which is a really nice text editor. You could use any text editor you want. They all have similar features. When we were looking at this in Dev Console, that allows us to do some nice filtering. Here in a raw log, we don't really have that. So what we want to do is we want to isolate these select statements. So I can use a regular expression. And if you're not familiar with regular expressions, let me know in the comments. I can do a video on those. Even though those aren't Salesforce specific, they're very, very useful in any programming language. So what I'll do is I'll make a regular expression to get rid of everything in the beginning of this line so that my select is always the first thing in the line. So I can do this regular expressions, which means start line and any characters up until the word select. I want to match the case, and then I'm going to replace it with select. So if I replace all, we'll see this select statement is now at the beginning of the line. Now what I can do is sort the whole file. And I'll sort them ascending. Now I'll look for the first instance of the word select. Oops. No longer need to match case. All right, so it's sorted it, and I know everything before this line I can get rid of, so I'm just going to do that now. And then at the very end, not too much at the end. All right, now I've got a file that is just select statements, and I can see this one's happening a bunch and this one's happening a bunch. So we've got some, again, this is pretty obvious, but this is a way, if you had a more complex log file, this is a way to filter it down to something reasonable. So I know this query is a problem because it's happening way too many times. There's no reason for us to have this query happen 50 times. And this other one as well. So we've got two problem children here. So one way to, now I want to search for this in the code. If I've got all my code on my file system, let's say I'm using VS Code, or if I've pulled all my metadata down, I could do that. But there's a fairly easy way to do it in the Dev console as well. What I'll do is I'll take one of these fields that I'm concerned with. Let's do this one. And in Dev console, I can do a search in files for that field. And I can see it only happens in a few spots. I don't care what's going on in my test classes. And here, I can see there's my select statement. So we'll start there. So this is one of the problem children. And this is happening right in the before update. And I know that the before update is typically what we're looking for is a SOQL query in a loop, or what's the reason why it happens over and over and over again. So here it's just in a trigger, and I know before update is not called within a loop. So this is probably fine. So let's take a look at the other offending query. And I've got the field account SLA. Again, I'll search for that through all of our code. I'll ignore the test classes. And here I can see that query. This is the query we see in our logs. And this is the problem, right? We've got a query in a for loop, and that's definitely a no-no. We never want to do that. And even here, we can see we've got another query in another for loop. So we've just got all sorts of problems going on. I'm not going to dig into the fix in this video. I'm going to save that for the next video. Otherwise, this would be too long. But what I really wanted to illustrate was a method for pinpointing where your problem is when you run into a too many SOQL queries error. If you're having this issue in your instance, I hope this helps you pinpoint it fairly quickly. If you are looking to take a deeper dive into Apex programming, I encourage you to check out my free assessment that will test you on various aspects of high-level knowledge of the Apex programming language. It'll help you kind of figure out where you are, where you stand, and maybe some gaps, knowledge gaps that you might want to fill in. So the URL is in the description of this video and also at the bottom of the screen. So I hope you go and check that out. If you want to have a little bit more information on SOQL queries themselves and how to write them, check out this video right here. I did a video a little while ago on how to write SOQL queries in Apex, and I will see you next time.